We have a wonderful noon concert with the Calidore String Quartet, and they're giving us a program which is varied, unusual, and quite spectacular. Beginning with a late Haydn quartet. Haydn was and is known as the father of the string quartet. He wrote nearly 100 of them, I think 83 actually. At the height of his powers as a quartet composer and experimenting. So we have a first movement, which is very unusual for the time, in that there is really only one theme instead of what would normally be expected with at least two. And he treats this theme in a very unusual way. The first movement is actually split into two parts. The first part using the theme slowly, and the second part using exactly the same theme, but now quicker, not your usual form. He then writes a very lengthy and beautiful slow movement, which also is kind of pushing the boundaries of what would have been the form at that time, and finishes with a beautiful minuet and finale in light-hearted Haydn fashion. The second piece on the program is by Caroline Shaw, a living, youngish female American composer. And she states that this piece was inspired, in fact, by listening to a certain Haydn quartet, and particularly the minuet and trio. Minuets and trios are a form in most of Haydn's quartets, and they consist of really an ABA pattern. So you have a minuet followed by a contrasting trio, and then a repeat of the minuet. In Miss Shaw's piece, this is quite evident, but using a language which is a couple of hundred years later than Haydn, very approachable, somewhat minimalist, and a very engaging, short-ish piece. The finale of this program is the third quartet by Erich Wolfgang Korngold. Korngold was a fascinating figure, starting as a true child prodigy in Austria, and then finding himself lured to Hollywood as a film composer in the 1930s. At that time, composing for film was not as delineated as it is today, where most film composers are not considered really in the realm of classical composers. At that time, it was the beginning of gigantic mega films with huge symphony orchestras, and Korngold was very happy to have that circumstance and be able to write for those films. However, after he had done that for 10 years, he wished to extricate himself and rejoin his previous incarnation as a true classical music composer. This quartet comes from that period, and it's much thornier and much more challenging to listen to than a film score would be. But it is ultra romantic, bordering on 20th century modernism, but not that much. and takes a really virtuosic quartet, which we have in the Calidore, and I'm sure this will be a memorable performance.